And a piece of me blamed her for that because I feel like had she been more present, that wouldn't have happened, right? Right? If my mom can't be good to me, or if somebody I love so deeply won't return that, there's no way you or somebody else, there's no way y'all can return that love.
You're watching Last of a Dying Seed, the only platform on this planet where we take real stories from real people and we pair them with movies. And today we have Chyna Benson on the channel, and the movie that she says best relates to a particular experience of her life is Holiday Heart. So for the world that don't know, how does this movie relate to your life?
Okay, so how y'all doing, world? I chose Holiday Heart more so for like the analogy to life, you know what I mean? Less so about specifics. So, for those of you who have seen the movie, it's literally about a young girl and her mom's a crack addict, and basically a guy that they know or that she knows who's like a drag queen, but he also is very rooted in the church. Like he kind of comes to her rescue, saves her. When her mom's unable to take care of her, he basically takes her in and kind of teaches her the ropes and cares for her because her mom was never really able to beat the addiction. So I chose that particular movie, and I just want to put this out there because I know it's going to be on a platform. My mom is not a drug addict by any means. She was never a drug addict. But I think a lot of the experiences are relative because a lot of us, especially growing up like Black in LA or whatever, we have parents who chose the streets or chose, another form of what is the word I'm looking for? Another form of comfort other than their kids. Like I feel like really my mom didn't want to have kids, but growing up and just being like running the streets and being out there, you meet men and y'all interact and y'all have these, these moments, and then you bring about children.
Right.
And then throughout life you realize by the way that you're treated, you know what I mean? Like maybe you didn't want to be a mother, or maybe you couldn't see beyond your own selfish reasoning that you should be out here really caring for your kids. And so while I felt supported in some ways, which the mom in the movie tried to do, like I don't know if you guys remember the scene, like her getting the bike and bringing the bike, but that's so monumental to me because there were like very tiny moments where she would try to show up and be present, and then it would still fall apart. You know what I mean? I think one of the things I remember the most growing up, just stuck in my head, it was my high school graduation. And like you invite all your family, everybody who you can give a ticket to these days. And my mom didn't make it in time. And that made me think of, I think that's why I chose the movie. That made me think of the bike moment. Like, even though she got there and I had graduated, like I literally had already walked out of the building, the class, they had dismissed us. We were all outside, taking pictures with family and stuff like that. And then she showed up.
Right.
And it literally broke my heart because you're the one person, my dad's there standing by my side, but you're the one person I want to make it there. You're my mom. And she didn't make it. And I was just, it was not because she couldn't. She was trying to do a favor for a friend or trying to bring a friend along with her or something. And I was like, you missed, even though you knew you would show up, even though you made it, you still missed the most important time. And I think I was I was at the top of my class. I graduated like valedictorian. Like I did all the things that a child would do for attention from their parents. I was getting straight A's. I was trying to, participate in all the school activities that I could. I was doing anything that I could to garner attention from an individual, to prove maybe that I was enough. You know what I mean? Like, hey, come in, see, like, this is what I'm doing. Like, even in the midst of the obstacles and the trials we've had, like, I'm still persevering, still pressing through, and you still didn't make it. And that is something, even at this age, like, it still sits with me. It's one thing I specifically remember. And I just, I don't even talk to my mom now, which is kind of hard because as you're growing up, you definitely need your mother and father. You need both of your parents.
Right.
But as you become a woman, you want guidance not only from your mother as a mother, but as another woman, right? In the world, the same way a man would, you need your dad as a young boy, but when you grow up, you need your dad as a man. Like, show me how to be a man at this age and in this world. And I don't have that. And where where Holiday comes in was, I was fortunate enough to have I had so many holidays. I don't want to make it seem like I just had one, right?
Okay.
I had so many holidays. My friends' parents, church members, people I met on the streets, just like so many people who like welcomed me in and like asked no questions, didn't judge me on my past, didn't question what happened, didn't make me feel guilty or make me feel bad. Just really accepted me as their own and like brought me in. And those are the people I remember. And it kind of made me realize that you don't need blood. You
Right.
know what I mean? You
Exactly.
don't need blood to survive in this life. And we're all attached to what our siblings, our parents,
Right.
cousins, grandmothers, grandfathers, whatever. But the majority of the love in my life comes from people who are not related to me. Who, you know what I mean? Some that I met later in life, some I met earlier, just depends. And I don't want it to seem like I don't have family. I have amazing siblings. I have a wonderful dad. Though his and I relationship didn't really develop until I was about 15.
Okay.
So that's what made the childhood a little bit harder because it was just my mom and her kids, and my dad wasn't around. And so when she would like step out or leave or do things like that, we were just kind of left to fend for ourselves in the same situation as the young girl in the movie was. Her name was Nikki, for
Right.
anybody that doesn't know. You know, when her mom would leave, she would just be stuck in the house trying to figure it out. And then you lash out, you know, siblings were lashing out at each other. We're all mad, not at each other, but you have nowhere else to place that anger, right? You have nowhere else to put that hurt. And so you're being mean to each other and you're taking things from each other. And if your brother or your sister has more than you have, you want that too, because there's nobody there, one, to negate the negativity, right? There's nobody there to tell y'all, hey, stop. That's not how you treat each other. That's not how you do. And the other half of that is like, you don't want anybody to have any more than you have. Like, at least if we're going to all be down, we should be all on the same playing field. If I'm down and I don't have, then you should be down and you shouldn't have. And so much of that played a role into like just my upbringing and like how I treated people for a while. I don't actually think right now, if you ask my friends and family like who I am, they'll gush about me. Chyna's so nice and so great and so kind and so this, but I really had to learn to become that person.
And when did like, because everything you're breaking down, you pretty much suffer from abandonment issues.
Right.
And what side of the spectrum in regards to how you dealt with relationships did it lead you on? Was you like super clingy because you didn't want people to leave you your life, or was you like just don't care and sabotaging a lot of good relationships along the way?
So that was the initial, right? So it's crazy because I was on both ends extremely. At one point, the initial was like sabotaging. I don't care. You know what I mean? Meeting good people, I don't care. Like, I'd say maybe from like 15 up until like 22, 23. Like, this is about me. That's when I was learning to start taking care of myself. I think I got my first job at 15. I got my first car at 16.
Okay.
All of those things I was able to accomplish on my own. So I'm like, oh, then I don't need anybody. Right? So the one person I wanted to really show up for me isn't showing up for me, and I learned to do it on my own. Shit, I don't need y'all. Oh, I hope I don't get emotional about that. The tears feel like they're coming. But so I was just meeting people. I remember I had a really good friend. Her name was Asia, and I've never apologized to her, so I hope in some way she'll be able to see this. She had a guy. They weren't together. There was a guy she really liked. And he was a handsome guy. All the girls liked him, whatever. But she really liked him, and they were really good friends. And her and I were really good friends. But my own selfish ways, my own selfish reasons, like, nah, I'm going to date him. Even knowing how she felt and whatever, I was so selfish and so self-sabotaging of the relationships because I didn't understand how a person could be good to me. If my mom can't be good to me, or if somebody I love so deeply won't return that, there's no way you or somebody else, you know what I mean, the videographer, the person next door, a friend, there's no way y'all can return that love. If the person I want it from isn't returning it, right? If you've given birth to somebody, you would assume, you know, like above anything else, I'm going to show up. So if that person's not showing up for you, you literally, especially as a child, you don't believe that somebody else is going to do that. And so, you know, in my mind, I'm like, she'll get over it. That was the first thing. And I ended up being with this guy and whatever, and it was gross. It ended like not well even at all. And so, Asia, I am sorry, girl. Like, I didn't know myself. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how much it would affect or hurt the next person. And I did that in so many relationships. I was dating a great guy at the time, self-sabotaged that. Just was like, I didn't think I was good enough for him, but I couldn't let him know that. Right? And so I would just, you know, the beginning of the relationship started out great, and then I would just become like mean and nasty. And I think those are habits I picked up from my childhood, from seeing kind of how my mom was to us at certain points. So like, she would be very kind at moments. And like, if let's say like she got paid or something and had money, and she'd be real nice for like the first few days and give his this, that. And then the moment she ran low, or the moment somebody made her angry or something, then all of that anger would be redirected at us. And I internalized that, and I did that to people. I would meet someone like you, and like for the first few months, it'd be great. Oh, Chyna's wonderful. She's this. And then in 6 months, you're like, do I even know this girl? Who is she? And I internalized that up until about 23. And I think that situation with my friend Asia changed me, because we haven't been friends since. I've actually not talked to her ever since then, which is a friendship, honestly, I thought I would have had for life. And had I not made that error, I probably would still have that friend. And so at that moment, it all switched. And then it was the other end of the spectrum, right?
Okay.
I become, now everybody I meet, I become the people pleaser, right? I want to be so good to you. Like so good to you that I can't imagine you leaving me. And then when I would be so good to people, I would enter in relationships, whether it was like reconciling with like family members, or dating a new guy, or meeting new friends. Like I would people please. I would give everything I had. I don't care. Use this. Take my car. Live here. Stay here. Here's the money. Here's this. So anytime they pulled away, then I would get angry. Well, I've given you everything. I've given you this. I've given you that. I've done this. I've done that. And now I'm pissed because you left me, because I didn't understand how to have any healthy attachments. And that lasted probably until like 4 or 5 years ago. Honestly, probably like in my very early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. I was just super clingy. I didn't want to let anybody go, even the people that were bad for you, or bad for me, excuse me. I would be with, somebody and knew that like, this is terrible. Like I shouldn't be here. And I liken that to like, even in the movie. So the mom ended up dating a drug dealer, right? So she was normally dealing with like the drug addicts like herself. Then she met the drug dealer, and he was just as bad as the freaking drug addicts. But you see like just a little glimmer of like maybe something good. Oh, he showed up for me in this way, or he showed up for me in that way. But every other thing was just as terrible. And I still held on to that. No, but that one good thing, I'll just hold on to this one good thing. He's been good to me this one time or these 2 times. And I'll hold on to that and overshadow literally everything else that I know is wrong. Yeah. And I was just like, it was literally a spiral, and I couldn't get out of it. You know what I mean? I couldn't get out of it. And then I think shortly after, I just made up my mind. Like I just started talking to God. Like, I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't want to people please, but I also don't want to self-sabotage. I don't want to give everybody all that I have, but I also don't want to withhold the good from the people who deserve it. But I couldn't find the balance because I had never really been taught the balance. There was nobody who had really taught me how to, lean in healthily, give a little, receive a little, give a little, receive a little. And in that clingy phase, I never learned how to receive. Even when people were being like just super good to me and they were like, Chyna, you don't have to keep giving. I didn't know how. And that was kind of off-putting for them. You know what I mean? Because in a way, I was blocking their blessings. All right, if you don't want me to give to you, then this relationship is one-sided, even though you think you're doing good, right? Even though you're giving all that you can, it's still one-sided. You won't receive from me, whether that be advice or help or money or whatever. I'm like, no, I didn't. And then in the end, I'd end up, on my knees needing help. And those people would have gone because I wouldn't have asked them for it, or I didn't know how to ask them for it. And, I pushed them away. And so regardless of what side of the spectrum I was on, I ended up alone anyway. And like shortly after that, after I talked to God about everything, then, it takes time, right? That process, God does not like drop things in your lap. I want $100 million. He's not like here.
Right.
He's like, all right, we're going to work. You're going to show me, you're going to prove to me that you want this, that this is something you want to escape and get out of. And we're going to put in the work. And if we do it together, obviously we'll come out of it. And I did. And now, like, when I say I'm surrounded by holidays, like I'm surrounded by the most amazing people. I mean, from my best friends, my siblings, my father, church members, just like even my coworkers, even like acquaintances, people I don't see often and don't get to hang around. A Daniel, you know what I mean? Something like people are just, he didn't have to, remind me of the opportunity. He didn't have to suggest that I come over here and talk to you, or you didn't have to have me on.
For sure.
You know what I mean? But it was you guys being able to see like, hey, this might be somebody who has a story. And all of us do, don't get me
Right.
wrong. And nobody's story is better than the next. And some are heavier and some are lighter. But it was just the opportunity because people saw something different in me. You know what I mean? They saw that I was worth helping or saw that I was worth listening to. You know what I mean? And so I'm so appreciative of that now. But like looking back, it's hard because you still long for that. And I can't change the past. None of us can, right? I know that I'll never be able to go back and relive those memories and redo, or even if my mom wanted to, we couldn't go fix that.
Right.
But it's being able to watch a movie like that and understand that there's always a way out, even when you can't see it. Right? In the beginning, Nikki knew she didn't know. She couldn't help her mom. You're a young girl. You're not able. What can you do? You can't get a job. You can't fend for yourself. You're trying to go to school. You're trying to maintain. Your house is dirty. You have no food. You have nothing. You barely have clothes. Nothing's clean. And my situation wasn't as dire as that. I don't mean I had to be dirty or I had to suffer from not eating multiple days. And there's times that we didn't eat and the lights were off and we lived in places that weren't, this is California. We talking about South Central and, some of the places, especially back then, they've done better now, but especially back then, places were hellholes. Like, and like I said, though my situation wasn't as bad, there were moments like things just were not good. Like I remember having to, or my mom being like, you guys need to eat at school because there's no food when you get home. And though those situations aren't rectifiable, it would be a lot easier if I could have those conversations now with her, but then there's still that disconnect.
What you think would be like your approach to having a conversation with her?
Okay, so like I said, it's been a few months. She was living with me, right? So she had previously lived with my brother for like 7 years. And they had gotten into it for one reason or another, and she had just come to my house. But prior to that, I hadn't even talked to her the year before, for a whole year. And then the holidays came, and she was like, I'm going to come to your house for Christmas and spend Christmas there. And I'm like, fine, that's absolutely fine. And like I said, her and my brother got into it, so she ended up staying with me. And just like we were just kind of bumping heads then. It wasn't terrible. I'm an adult now, so I know how to regulate my emotions, thankfully. So I wasn't lashing out and having all these issues, but we just weren't getting along. It just wasn't working out. And I was like, I tried to sit her down before she left. I tried to sit her down and honestly have a conversation. And I was like, hey, one, I don't think we should live together. It's not a smart idea. There's so many unresolved traumas and issues in our past that I don't think us living together, without us having a conversation is going to work. And she immediately like blew up at me, right? Like just immediately was mean and nasty. And we kind of got into an argument. And I don't really argue. I try to be non-confrontational because I feel like there's always a discourse to be had when there's a disagreement. It doesn't immediately have to go into a fight.
Right.
And that's something I've been working on my whole life because that's what I suffered from as a child because of my upbringing. So I didn't want to have that. And you're my mom. Who the hell wants to argue with their mom, or with any parent? You don't want to have that. And so I tried to have it, and she immediately like brushed me off. Like, I think the conversation was like, hey, Mom, I don't think we should be living together. I don't, it's not smart, especially not until we have these conversations. And I was like, she's like, well, I don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I was like, well, would you be open to discussing what happened in the past and how we got here? And then she lost it. And that's when I think I realized she needed to get the help on her own, right? I'm trying to intervene and say, hey, this is how you hurt me. And this is what you've done to me. And not just me, this is what you've done to me and my siblings. And this is why we're hurting. And a piece of me, my youngest brother passed away 10 years ago. And a piece of me blamed her for that. Because I feel like had she been more present, that wouldn't have happened, right? And it did. And it's something I've always wanted to talk to her, and it's not her fault, right? She's not the person that pulled the trigger. But I feel like he would have been less in the streets had she been a more present mother. I don't know that to be true. I know very present mothers, I know very present mothers whose sons and daughters still end up, we all know that, good parents. But this is California, and the streets are very, there's a very strong pull here. You grow up in any hood here, regardless of if you got put on or whatever. If you grew up in, you know, thank you so much. If you grew up in Watts or wherever, which is where a lot of my family's from and stuff like that, you're just from Watts. You can't help it, whether you got put on, those kind of things. And so I can't particularly say that it's because she wasn't, a great mother that it ended up. But a part of me was like, if you just showed up a little bit more, if you just been a little more present, maybe we still have him. And then I got to the point, I think I'm now just realizing, in my mid to late 30s, I'm just like, I'm starting to see her more as a person and less of a mother. And not because I want to, but because at this age, I have to realize that she was a person before she was a mother, right? She was a whole woman before she had kids.
Right.
And there had to have been some type of trauma or something dramatic or traumatic that happened in her life that didn't allow her to have the openness and the closeness with her children that we desired.
Right.
And the sad part is we can't get her to open up about it, right? There's no... I feel like I've tried. I feel like my other siblings have tried, to just ask questions. I've talked to my dad, who obviously knew her before I was born. So, and who's a great guy. Love that guy. Talked to my dad, and he was, he's giving me a little glimpse. He was like, yeah, your mom and her mom, my grandmother, who was also very good to us. My mom's mom was very good to us. But according to my dad, maybe not so much to my mom. But we never got that. Like, my mom, to be fair, never downplayed my grandmother, right? She never tried to make it seem like, oh, she's not a good woman or whatever my grandmother wanted to be to us, she allowed her to be. And so my grandmother was very good to us, showed up every chance she could and was there and supported us. And like, my grandmother's very old school, and rest in peace to her. But I'm talking about breakfast before school and lunch when you get home and washing your clothes and ironing you, like just that, and so because she was that good to us, I couldn't fathom in my mind, like, of course you did this for your kids. If you're doing it for us, of course. And then speaking with my dad and maybe a few of my aunts and uncles and stuff like that, of course, because none of them ever really get into the story of how they were raised. And I don't know if that's traumatic for them or they don't want to share, or maybe their memories may be different from what my mom's is. So they don't want to discredit maybe how she was feeling or what her experience was. And like I said, my parents are from the South, Fort Worth, Texas, to be exact. And even before then, like deeper South, places like Kilgore and West Texas, super small towns where they still remember segregation and growing up in racist neighborhoods and stuff like that. And my grandmother had her first child at 15. And her second child, which would be my mom, she had at 17. So kids at a very young age. So I'm sure she didn't really know how to be a mother. And I don't know what tumultuous relationship they had, but something had to have happened, right? For her to have such a disconnect. Right. And then I used to get mad. I'm like, okay, well, if you didn't want children, speaking of my mom, like if you didn't want children, why did you have multiple? Right? If the first one is already hard, and I scream this at my friends or anybody, it's for anybody. If the first one is hard, the second one's not going to make it easier, right? It's going to, if you're struggling for money now, and if it's hard for you to regulate your emotions, if it's hard for you to have you time, if you can't do that with 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 aren't gonna, make it any better. Everybody loves the baby phase, and then as soon as children develop that, personality, it gets rough. You can't control, the way your 5-year-old's gonna act or what they're gonna do. And I held a grudge because there's a gap between. So there's 4 of us, technically 5 of us. I have an adopted brother, but there's 4 of us, my biologically. So there's my older sister. There's a 6-year gap between us. And so I'm like, shoot, well, if there was, you could have just kept her and it would have still been a struggle, but the remainder of us wouldn't have had to have had the struggles that we've had, And so my older sister, she had actually given to my aunt, my grandmother's sister. And my older sister had stayed with her until she was like 14 or 15. So my mom didn't really have to raise her. And so I don't know if that's why she was okay having more children. But it didn't get better. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, how, people fail the first time around. Like maybe you didn't do right by your first child, and
Right.
because you were young and you didn't understand or whatever. But then you have your second child and you're more knowledgeable and you're more comfortable and you have more money and you're more stable. Those things just never came.
Right.
Right. And like I really resented her a lot for that. And I think in like even with speaking with you now, like I still have a little bit of it, you know, because I'm like, at what point do you fix it?
Right.
And I honestly have no idea how to reach out and how to attempt to close that gap.
Okay.
Right? Because I don't want to live the rest of my life without my mom. That's
Right.
not the goal.
Right.
You know what I mean? Planning on having more children and like things like that. Like the goal is to be inclusive. I want my parents there. I want you guys a part of my life. I want my siblings there. I want
Right.
anybody who wants to be there and who's really interested in being a part of my world. I want you there. But I'm not sure how to, you know, reach out. And then when I reach out, what do you say? You know what I mean? Like I'm honestly not sure. Like how have you ever closed? You know, is there a relationship you've been in that you've had to like mend? And if so, how did you do it?
Yeah.
You know, I honestly am like at a loss for that.
Yeah. It's been relationships that I had to mend first by forgiving them within my own heart so that I can even be in their presence long enough. And then just by building a good relationship without even talking about how we falling apart anyway. Because then they going to end up coming around anyway and feel it in their heart so badly that they want to clear the air.
Okay.
Because they already feel some type of way about you now. They cherish you so much in this moment that they just want to get it out. And you don't know how they going to blurt it out, but eventually they just going to want to spill it. But I feel like it's been hard trying to talk about it first, then build a relationship.
Okay.
Because they don't want to face the truth.
Okay.
So that's
that's my because I do want to go forward. Don't get me wrong. Had given the chance and the opportunity to fix it with my mom instantly, immediately, I'm gonna go right into it. Like, but I think, and maybe that's something I need to deal with within myself, because I feel like fixing it for me, the past traumas have to be addressed because it seems like we keep repeating the same pattern, right? Like we keep falling in again back to the movie. Like the mom comes around, she's a little bit sober today, she's fine, she's good, we can have fun, we laugh, we joke or whatever, and then 2 days later you're right back at it. You're right back into this negativity, or you're right back into this negative mind state. And we all know how energy works, especially when you're living with somebody. You walk into the house and your wife's mad or your dad's mad, your kid, you immediately feel that. You like, what's going on here?
Right.
And you have to live in that energy. And that's a place that I've dug myself out of over the last 10, 15 years. Like I've done the work, or I don't even want to say done the work. I'm continuously doing the work every day. I get up, like I'm one of those people. I have to have self-affirmations. I make sure to tell myself I love you and do all these things to kind of remind myself that, hey, you're not alone. You have people that love you. You're supported. You're out here. You know, this is California. It's this, like the saying goes in New York City. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. It's expensive. It's hard. The housing is bad. Traffic is bad. The cost of living. Gas is $5. Milk is $5. So I remind myself every day, like,
a carton of eggs is a car note right there.
Like $12 for, for a carton of eggs is insane. $1 an egg, like things like that. I literally have to remind myself that every day, hey girl, you make it. You're doing good. You're doing well. You're supported. And if you need somebody, there's people out there for you.
Right.
So when an energy that is negative comes around, it's so easy to just drop back down into that place, right? And sometimes when I find myself in the same place as her, even when we haven't spoken a word to each other, I immediately like drop back down into that. You know, I kind of feel almost like minimal, like I kind of revert back to like being a child again, looking for that like approval or seeking that praise from a mother who doesn't know how to give it, you know, and I don't. The hardest part for me right now is wondering if we'll ever get there.
Right.
So I've been seeing there's like a trend going around for people, because I feel like we're within the same age range. There's a trend going around like, go no contact. If your parent's this kind of person and and it's on TikTok and Instagram and all the platforms you can think of. Go no contact if your parent's this kind. And it's the last thing I want to do. I'm in no contact now, But who wants to live like that?
Exactly.
Right? I don't want to be in a place where I can't call my mom.
Right.
And not for advice, but just even to cry or have a moment or
Right.
whatever, you know, when I need you to be there for me and my child or whatever.
Right.
I want to be able to call you and say, hey, like, can you just listen? Can you hear me out? And I hear the no contact thing, and it sounds good in theory, but it's not a life I want.
Exactly.
But I truly don't know what the next step is to getting there. And there's such a stigma in the Black community about therapy, right? We've never really been,
Exactly.
Therapy was not, I don't need nobody telling me what to do, especially older Black folks,
Exactly.
right? They're just, I ain't nobody telling me this is my house, this is my life. Exactly. What do those people know about me? And whatever. And luckily I've been lucky enough to have a therapist, the same therapist, a Black female therapist who kind of understands the world that I'm coming from and is able to relate. And thankfully for her, what I realized in therapy was you need people who don't know your story because they have an objective view. They can step outside of it and say, hey, if you look at it from like this, just like you told me, I don't necessarily address the past with the people I want the relationship with. I kind of try to start building from where we are now because they're afraid to face the truth.
Right.
And while I think that may work for a lot of people, or for most people, and in most situations, it's harder with the parent because it's so intimate, right? It's one of the most intimate relationships you'll ever have. It's like parent-child, and outside of that, maybe your significant other, your spouse. But it's so intimate that you almost know this person as well as you know yourself. And you can almost hear when they speak, like when, you can feel them falling back into a pattern that feels familiar, but it's hurtful.
Right.
So like the moment I try to talk to my mom or address certain things, I can feel the change of like the tone in her voice change. And I can tell in that moment she doesn't want to hear me. Right. And so I know. So then I immediately become a child again. I shut down. Okay, well then you're not going to hear me. I'm not going to talk. And now we're both sitting there and there's an elephant. There's a tension in the room. And you're walking around in that tension for a day or two. And then it dissipates. Everybody walks in, oh, okay, I'm great, I'm fine. And then you're like that for another couple of days. And then something happens and that tension resurfaces. And then you keep going and it's such an unhealthy way to live because in those moments, it is hard to regulate who you are. I want to step out of character. I want to get mad too. Shit, I'm pissed too. In my mind, I have a reason to be mad at you. Right. From the other angle, I'm looking at you like, how are you mad at me? You had me. Right. Like you chose this life, right? You, as I call it, you chose thug life. You chose to be out here and have kids and do that. I didn't choose you. And it's like, it hurts for lack of a better term. Like, not being able to fill that void or not being able to mend that relationship is painful. But if the other person doesn't get help, Nikki's mom in the movie, she never really sought help. Right. She just kept going. Right. And like, she knew it was bad. Right. She knew the drugs were bad. She knew the people she was dealing with were bad people. She knew the drug dealer guy was bad. All she knew, she saw that, Holiday took in her daughter and decided to raise her daughter and help her and she was good enough with that. Right. But that really wasn't good enough. Right. You know what I mean? When you think about it, I would never put my child off on you. And just knowing that you're capable and able and that you are and you chose to take care of my child, should I continue to go be a terrible person on my own?
What would you say is like, cause man, we listening to so many scars that don't necessarily bleed, but they left a mark on you, and we seeing it in your story and in your behavior. What are some things you feel like you had to unlearn in order to heal, or that you're still trying to figure out what you need to unlearn in order to heal?
Okay, so very good point, because all I do every day is unlearn. I thought I would be learning new things, and I do, but that's when it comes to like trying to build a life for myself, right? Trying to establish myself better financially, or trying to move into a better place, or decide what kind of career I want. Those things I'm learning. Right. But most of my habits I'm unlearning or relearning. Like I said, the clinginess, the people pleasing. I really just got out of people pleasing. I always tried to give after. When I got to that end of the spectrum, I really just tried to give everybody everything. Here, if I give you everything, then you have no reason to leave me, right? You have no reason. And I realized that doesn't work for anybody.
Right.
Because that's a burden for people.
Right.
They should have the option to leave. If the relationship is no longer fulfilling for them at whatever level, they should have the option to leave. They shouldn't be burdened into, well, Chyna's giving me this, so I can't leave her. Even though I don't love her anymore, even though I don't have the same feelings. And that's whether you're, again, it's romantic or platonic or familial, whatever. I was putting such a burden on them. Like, hey, I've helped you do this and accomplish this. And you've met this person because of me, and I've given you this. And they're all looking at me like, yeah, Chyna, you helped me, and that's great. But I think our paths are done, and I wouldn't let them.
Right.
No, you've got to stay here. I'd figure out a reason. I'd get all weird or emotional, and I'd just, make up an excuse as to why they wouldn't leave, or I'd badger them into, well, look at what I've done, which is so bad.
Right,
I think
for sure.
so many of us, that's one of the biggest things I'm relearning right now is not to badger people into wanting to be a part of your life, and I just, and mine was what I thought I was doing it out of love, right? I'm thinking in my head, like, I love you, please don't leave. Don't take that away from me. But again, everybody should have that choice. If this relationship no longer serves you for whatever it was serving you for, you should have the choice to leave, and it shouldn't be bad. You know what I mean? You should be able to walk away in peace, but I didn't know how to do that. And now I'm learning that I can love people and let them go. And they also have the right and the privilege to do that with me. And that is one of the biggest lessons I've learned. Also, just relearning to program my mind, because it's so easy to be negative all the time, especially when you've grown up in a negative environment. Like you said, your past. And what you easily could have let what happened for those 15 years shape you into, you didn't have to choose this path.
For sure.
You know what I mean? You could have came out and did something completely different, and you could have been warping the minds of young men under you. Like, again, this is how you earn badges and stripes in the streets, and this is how you do it. And you don't get the respect from me unless you take the path I took. But you decided to cast a light on people's stories and say, hey, this is what my calling is, and this is what I know how to do. And it's, for me, a lot of it is just like really rewiring my brain to be positive. Like I said, I have to wake up every day, every single day. Even before I came here, I woke up. And I never wake up this early, so you got me, because I work overnight. So I'm normally waking up at 11. But I woke up this morning, my alarm went off, I laid in bed, and before I just even got out to like shower or anything, I was just like, today's going to be a good day. It's going to be a positive day. God, give me the words to say. Give me the heart to be clear. Give me the mind to be clear. Otherwise, any little thing, had I not done that, or on the days that I don't do that or forget, or maybe I don't do it as in depth, I notice when somebody cuts me off on the freeway, I'm like, quick. What's going on? Could y'all just drive? And it happened today. Somebody did. I was like, you know what? It's all right. You on it, like, you're not late. You're still on time. You're fine.
For sure.
Maybe they didn't see you. You don't know. And then I realized, like, when I drove up, I was like looking in the car, because that's what we do, right? When somebody does something weird, I'm like looking in the car, and the lady's like, literally her first thing was to be like, I'm sorry. Like, she put her hand up like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, okay. And those, but that's, for me, a lot of that has to do with how I choose to see the situation. I could have saw her hand up as being like a F you, or, you know what I mean? Or like, girl, I can do what I want. This is my car. You were behind. I could have taken it any other way, but because I chose to wake up a little bit earlier and just literally talk to God, because I wanted to get on here and be able to articulate myself without it seeming just super emotional, right? I wanted there to be some type of logic to it, right? Because a lot of the time, especially as women, we run off emotions, just how I feel. And that's why I noted that there is possible traumas and things in my mom's, past and in her childhood that led her to these actions.
Right.
Because had she not had them, she probably could have showed up in a lot better ways than she did. And the rewiring process is what's hard. I think nobody talks about like that. There's 30-something years of this learned behavior that I have.
Right.
So 5 years of that's nothing compared to the to the past that I've had of just like consistently. And I used to wake up those days negative. Oh, she doesn't love me. She doesn't this and she doesn't that and she doesn't. And I really convinced myself for a long time that she doesn't love me, rather than maybe she just didn't know how. Right. And I think that's where the relearning is coming in for me right now. Like maybe it's not that she doesn't. Maybe she just honestly doesn't know how to love me or love my siblings, because she wasn't loved, or she didn't receive love in the way she thought she should have received it. And I don't know how she received it, because I wasn't there, right? I didn't grow up, like I said, my parents are a little bit older than the people in my generation, like my peers. And so I'm realizing that maybe she honestly just didn't know. But even that's a hard pill to swallow, because then you think, okay, maybe you were hurt and maybe there were traumas and things that occurred in your past, but you can't take that out on everybody in your future, right? So that's a big part for me, and I'll bring it back around full circle in a second. But growing up the way that I did, I had to learn, especially probably like when I got into my late 20s, I was like, yeah, I can't just keep treating people like that. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I was hurt in my past. Yeah, people did mean things to me. Yeah, people hurt me. They lied. They did all of this, whatever. I'm like, but I've also done that to people, right? I've not been great. There are times I could have chosen better and I didn't. Right. But I also can't let that define me, right? I have to move forward in positivity. I can't treat everybody from here on out. I can't walk in here and be like, oh, well, this is my story and this is just how I am, and be a jerk to you on your podcast. I can't do that. That's not the way it works. And so a part of me felt like with her, yeah, you may have been hurt in your past, and yeah, you didn't receive the love you wanted, but it was also at some point in your life your responsibility to fix that, right? You couldn't control how your mom treated you or your dad or maybe your siblings or the people in your life that you loved, but at what point do you decide to correct it? Right. And I think for me, that was the biggest turning point. When I recognized that about her, like, hey, mom, like, okay, yeah, you're fine. And my mom's in her late 60s, or in her mid 60s. And I'm just like, okay, at what point did you decide to turn your life around? And you didn't. Because the same feelings and same discussions and things we had when I was a younger child, we still have now, right? And so I knew I didn't want that for myself. And that's the unlearning that I had to do. I had to unlearn to be, to stop being negative, to stop blaming my past, to stop using my mom hurting me or not being available the way I wanted her to as a crutch. Right. Because I did for the longest time. Oh, I treat people like that. Well, nobody treated me like that when I was growing up. And nobody showed up for me. Right. And I had to do this alone. And I remember doing this alone. I left, I moved out at 17. I've never lived with her again. You know what I mean? It's been like 20 years ago at this point. And it's not that I don't want to, like, please, God, I would love to have a landing post, right? And don't get me wrong, now, like, I could go live with my dad and things would be fine. But neither one of my parents lived here. They live here anymore. My dad's in Texas. My mom just moved back to Texas, which I didn't even know. I found out through a cousin. Didn't even know she moved. So that's how disconnected we are, right? I found out, like, one of my cousins texted me and was like, hey, do you know your mom's in Texas now? And I'm like, actually, no, I didn't know that. None of us, none of my siblings, none of us weren't privy to the information. And of course, a lot of it was just, like I said, unlearning and relearning that I can't keep using that as a crutch. I can't keep using how I was treated and how I was brought up and the obstacles that I went through and the pain that I went through as a crutch. And as a, what's the word I'm trying to find? And as a catalyst to how I treated other people. Because then I would continue, I would walk through life hurting people if that was the case. Right. And that's something I don't want to do. Like, I actually want to show others who've gone through this situation, or young girls or young guys, whomever, that are going through this situation. Like, you can't come out of it. Right. Now, it's not easy. Right. I still cry. You know what I mean? I still long for the relationship. When I get to see all of my friends have amazing mothers, and who in part mother me, even still now, which is what I'm so grateful for. Like I said, those are my holidays. Right. They're the hearts. Right. Like, they're my best friends' moms. I mean, care so much. I don't even see them. They're sending birthday presents, food, this, that. Tell Chyna I said hi, all of the wonderful things. And I still see them. There's like a twinge of jealousy. And I love that for my friends. I'm not mad that they're receiving it. I'm hurt because I don't.
Right.
You know, and then I have no display of that. And for my children, you know, I want their grandmother involved. I would love for, you know, their grandmother to be a part of their life, but not in the capacity that I've had to deal with. And that's what's scary, because can I introduce you to my child and trust that you won't elicit the same anger and hurt on them that you did me? And if you do, then now I have to separate you, right? There's no way I can have you cause harm to the person I'm bringing up.
Right.
And that's, I mean, when I say that's a relearning situation every day, like literally, I'm a writer. I will literally just write, and I'll like standards. You remember standards in school?
Yeah.
I will write like, today is a good day. Today is a
Right.
good day. Today is a good day. To literally, because I get in a funk.
Right.
And I know everybody talks about, and this is why social media is so insane, and it's so hard to believe a lot of things that you see on social media, because everybody talks about cutting people off and how easy it is. It is not. I don't know who these people are, and I don't know what kind of robots y'all
Right.
are programmed to be.
Right.
But how do you just wake up and be like, I'm done?
Right.
Now, with people you met on the street, and maybe it was a short-lived relationship, six months to a year or something like that, but just waking up one day and just being like, F my mom or my parents or my siblings or somebody that's been a part of my life without, and I'm not saying they haven't tried to mend it. I don't know the particulars of anybody's situation, but for me, it's not as easy as somebody else saying, just let it go.
For sure. Yeah. And if you could, all right, the young girl who went through that experience, I want to frame the question in the way that if she can be right here watching the movie with you,
Okay.
your younger self that went through that, like, what would you want her to notice in the movie that will help her in the real world?
Okay. Help is always there. You just have to know where to look for it. Right? And that's particular in the movie when like the mom was getting beat up. She was getting beat up by her drug addict boyfriend or something, and she ran and got Holiday. And Holiday was like, he was dressed up in the little outfit, fancy little heels and stuff, and like strutting, running down the little alley with her. And you know, I don't even know if she knew that she could ask him for help, but that's the only thing this person she saw.
Right.
Look familiar. I've seen you. Please, something's happening to my mom. Please, I need help. And he came along. He didn't ask. He didn't stop and was like, well, can you tell me what you saw? There was no question. There's always help. There's somebody that's paying attention. There are people watching. And there are people with kind hearts, man. Like, they just exist. And I know growing up in certain situations, like I said, especially in certain areas, impoverished neighborhoods and communities where there's no support or lack of support or very little positive role models and things like that, there are good people that are paying attention, that are watching, that are so willing to help. We just are never taught to ask, right? And so my thing to that little girl or little boy or whomever is like, just look around and pay attention. Those people are there.
Right.
Those people are there. And they will come to your aid, no questions asked. I do it immediately. You know what I mean? I see a little girl lost. I see a little boy. I start talking, hey, where's your parents? Where can I help? Can I take you? Can I do something? Are you hungry? You need anything? Where are your shoes? Where somebody's always willing to help. And it is a matter of just looking around to see. And it doesn't have to come from, again, it's not a family thing. You don't have to go find an uncle or a cousin, or it literally can be your next door neighbor.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? I've lived with people who've had no blood relation to me and who've taken me in. I remember one of my brother's girlfriends, even after they broke up, she was like, Chyna, you can still be here. She's like, my relationship with him is my relationship with him. She's like, I don't love you less because him and I are having issues. And it's allowed me to stay, still one of my closest friends today. You know, and it's, and they've not been together in like 10, 12 years. And she's still one of my, because she was just a person, she didn't know what I was going through when I think this was when I was 17 and I had moved out, and I was telling you about, I had moved out and I really didn't have anywhere to go. And they were living together, and my brother was like, come over here with us. And I was like, fine. And then I went over there, and, you know, I'd stayed there, and she asked no questions. She didn't say, why is your sister here? No questions. She was like, hey, she had 2 kids. They both had their own room. She put both of her kids together and gave me her daughter's room. Literally just out of the kind of, didn't know me. I had never met her. And it was literally, she was just the help I needed.
And that's so that hit home for me so much, because when I went to the parole board, one of the questions they asked is what you would have had done different.
Okay.
Even though the crime was at 18 years old, I went all the way back to 8 and said I would just ask for help. That's literally what I told them. But I was the same child that'd just keep stuff bottled up. I didn't do much talking. So for people who grew up with me, I blow their mind every day. Like, bro, you didn't even talk growing up. Now you got a podcast.
Right. Like, you talk for a living right now. Right.
So that's literally what I told them, because I'm like, that right there probably would have prevented the chain of events that led up to that.
Okay.
That tire path. I don't know, but I chose not to do that. When if I just would have did that at a time we was poor, at a time it wasn't no food in the refrigerator, at a time where I was raised by violence. As a child, you're responding violently because you're surviving.
Right.
You're thinking survival. You want this technically traumatic experience to stop. So that's violence is a form of denial. Boom. And I got that from seeing my siblings and everybody around me. This is how you respond to conflict. So I just followed instead of just asking for help. And my path probably would have been different. At least it would have gave me a chance.
Right.
Even having a glimpse of seeing somebody ask for help probably would have, but I never had none of that. It was dog eat dog. Everybody trying to take up as much space in the world as they could.
Possible.
So that's what I knew. That's what I took to. That's what I mimic. And until it actually became me in my every existence, to where I earned that time that I got. And then I earned my freedom up out of there. So yeah, but that was amazing listening to your story.
Thank you.
And y'all heard it here. Chyna Benson, as her life relates to the movie Holiday Heart. And the main character she identified with was Nikki. And if y'all think of a scene in the movie when Nikki was reading off her poems, she said, "When your stillness, you feel God's blessing." So I pray that while y'all was sitting still listening to her story, that you felt the blessing of healing in some way, shape, or form. But I appreciate you till next time.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Every seed that we planted bore some rotten fruit. The baby boomers sold crack just to cop a coupe. They taught us slide and shoot, judge hangers with the noose. Never show no mercy on your ops, never call a truce. Big bruh said you could be a pimp. All you gotta do is have her mind and you could lead the bitch. Brainwashed by the 6, but then with self-imposed limitations. Trying to hit this home run before we load the bases. Never had no patience, all my partners died young, and yet and still we emulated examples that they died from. We was on the hype hunt, call it learned behavior. Post your gun on Instagram, 100 on the cater. Chain with the savior, but you never love your neighbor. Crabs in the bucket, never do each other favors. Taught us to treat our brother as a sucker or the ops. And you can't be gang if you don't put one in the box. Our example was destructive, last of a dying seed. How can the fruit grow healthy if it's a rotten tree? They brainwashed me and tainted my perception young. It's hard to have vision when you blind, deaf, and dumb.